Cool.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final Mythgard Movie Club of the 2018 year. Very excited to be here and have you all here. Talking about Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. I guess we'll go start by going around our panel and introducing ourselves. I'll start. I am Kat Sass. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Mythgard Movie Club. My other co-host, Curtis Wyant, is running our slideshow tonight, but he is not joining us for the discussion. So in addition to the movie club, Curtis and I also run Cat and Kurt's TV Review, which is a speculative TV podcast that we do. And I also volunteer for Signum University in Mythgard part-time as well. So everybody else, would you please introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Emily Strand, and who am I? Sometimes I take Mythgard classes, and I really enjoy them. What else do? I write stuff down about movies and books that I watch, and I have published many of them on HogwartsProfessor.com, and now I am writing my own blog called Liturgy and Life, which is about liturgy and life. And I also teach world religions to nursing students. The end.
There you go. It's good. Kelly, go ahead.
I'm Kelly. I've been with Mythgard and Signum for a few years now. I am doing my thesis. I've always been a fan of Harry Potter, grew up with Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings, and I'm really excited to talk tonight about Fantastic Beasts.
Good. Yeah, I'm Brenton Dickinson. I'm a faculty member at Signum University and a few other schools. I'm finishing up a PhD on C.S. Lewis and spirituality, and I'm really just kind of coming in here as a fan of this, and someone who's fascinated by the world that Rowling has built over the last couple of decades. So yeah, 25 years really, I suppose. Yeah.
It's getting up there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we have a couple quick announcements next, if my memory serves. So, Accio announcement slide, as Curtis told me to say. So, Moot's coming up for next year. I have, I think, pretty good intel that information and registration for the big Myth Moot should be posted early in the new year, like around January 1st-ish. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then there's a bunch of new moots coming up in 2019 in Orlando, Florida, the Netherlands, Amherst, Massachusetts, and New Zealand, which sounds amazing, and I definitely want to keep my eye on that. If anybody doesn't know already, spring classes are open for registration and will continue to be open. They start, I think January 14th is the start date, and registration is open now, but is always open for 2 weeks past the start date of the semester. I know our sorting hat would like me to tell you that the earlier you sign up, the better, to help you get into the best preceptor section possible. So encourage everybody to take a look at the spring classes. And finally, through December 24th for Christmas, we have a special Anytime Audit gift certificate promotion going on right now, which are $75, which is pretty good bargain. And you can even give them to yourself. Once you have the code, we really don't care who accesses it. So for yourselves, for your friends and families, this is a really good stocking stuffer. So take a look at that. The gift that keeps on giving, the gift of education. More can you ask for Christmas? Okay. Final announcement. We have the winners after a bloody battle. We finally have the final slate for our 2019 movie club. So some of these were pretty down to the wire. I was really keeping an eye on the Shining Solaris fight, which went the other way. The Shining was in the lead for a long time, and then there was, the Black Horse came up. So yeah, in 2019, we're going to talk about the 1960s musical Camelot. We're going to talk about Solaris, the original Blade Runner, and Blade Runner 2049, which should be pretty fun to do those back to back. The Fifth Element, and Pan's Labyrinth, which is a particular favorite of mine. So looking forward to those. Don't have exactly the order figured out yet, but the first movie that we talk about will definitely be the end of January. January 31st is the first session. So we will keep you guys posted on the schedule for those.
Good.
All right. So want to kick this off with kind of a general icebreaker for you guys. What were your impressions and expectations for this movie? Were you excited? Were you kind of blah about it? Were you more or less excited after you saw the first movie? What were you kind of going in expecting, and how did the movie sort of live up to your general expectations?
Well, I don't know. I think I actually really enjoyed the first one. And I heard such mixed reviews, like just total polar opposite reviews almost on this film. There's a lot of like fans really liked it, but critics didn't, and then some fans didn't like it, and then some critics did. Like, I don't know. I went in with pretty low expectations, and therefore was pleasantly surprised, which is pretty much my favorite way to see a movie, because I hate the opposite. I think there were some things that definitely disappointed me, and definitely I think should have been left alone and not done, but that's just me. But I think because I had such kind of like, okay, it could be terrible or it could be good, it enabled me to enjoy the parts that I did enjoy all the more. So for me, I think I was a little bit pleasantly surprised because of those bad reviews. It took me a couple weeks to watch it too, so I heard lots of things about it before going in.
Okay, so you didn't go right away.
I didn't. No, I saw it maybe a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I saw it Sunday or Saturday. So yeah, we waited a long time, but I heard nothing about it. So that was how I dealt with that, is I just closed my ears and I didn't go on the internet for 3 weeks. And it's sort of, I mean, yeah, like, I don't know. I guess I just choose to like, things in a sense. Like, I'm sure we'll get to the problems. The first film for me, the first Fantastic Beasts one, was a problematic and beautiful and interesting and fun film that I quite liked. And granted, all the things that we basically trashed about it last time we got together, and this one, it's the same, just not as strong a film. It's not. I don't know, like a brilliant novelist does not a screenwriter make, and this is an example of a novelist who is trying to be a screenwriter, and they really just need a team of screenwriters to write after she writes a great novel, which she could do, I think. So that's that was maybe a little heavy-handed, but that's my thoughts. So, So, but I mean, I paid like whatever it costs, $100 to go to the movie, so I'm definitely gonna enjoy that thing. So.
I'm kind of the same way. I don't go to the movies very often at all. And so I was excited. I was excited partly because I was going with my favorite local Harry Potter friends, who I also do Harry Potter trivia with. We're called Granger Danger, TM, actually, because another team showed up with that same name one time, and we were like, Granger Danger, TM. So the original. So I hadn't heard anything yet. I was kind of open-minded. I actually really liked the first film, while acknowledging some of its problems. I did really enjoy it. I found it very entertaining. And it was funny. This film, I sat through it making a lot of cynical, snarky asides throughout the entire film. Like, I don't know. I didn't expect to do that. Maybe it's just my current state of mind or something, but I was just questioning everything and also very confused. I have a lot of questions. Tonight, I think my main role is going to be asking questions in the sincere hope that you all will answer them for me, because I'm very, very confused about a number of things. And so I did pick up the screenplay. I was walking through the library this week, and there was a stack of them there, and I noted that they were not flying off the shelves. So I decided to take one home, and I've taken a brief look at it, and it does help with some of the confusion. But yeah. So but I mean, all in all, I did enjoy the film. Most of the time with films, I think they're too long, and I think this one was definitely too long. But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed, one of the things I enjoyed most was Jude Law's performance as Dumbledore. That was one of my favorite things about it. So
yeah, it's hard not to love Jude Law. I mean, Jude Law, like, come on, Anyway, it's sort of a theological man crush here, but like, what, like, was it too long? Or like, if you think about it from a plot points, right? All the twists. It was about 45 minutes too short, I think. Like, isn't that one of the things that's like, and this, and then this, and then that, like, there's no gorilla quest as there is typically in kind of her films. And so that's why I think it's disorienting, because we never get. Yeah, I guess the films in general. I miss in the Harry Potter films. I miss the everydayness of school, and eating and celebrating and sleeping and complaining and just like the class time and it's like this. It's like we're getting a 3-hour film, but just kind of skipping bits along the way. I suspect there's 3 hours of footage, and they dropped it because they didn't feel like it was tenable.
Yeah, Chris Swank sent me an article. I think it was on Hogwarts Professor. Somebody cataloged going through every interview and clip and trailer and compiled all the evidence for the missing scenes. So scenes that we have some evidence that they were either written or shot at some point and cut out. And I mean, that's typical, I think, and especially in these kind of big blockbuster franchise movies, that there's a lot on the cutting room floor, but you definitely do get the sense that you're missing something. I mean, and that's true from the screenplay as well. I mean, Emily said like some of the screenplay clarifies certain questions. It certainly explains certain things that are confusing when you're watching the movie, although that's not so much, like, I think that's a problem. Some of this, there are logical leaps that are being lost in translation of exactly how and why a character gets somewhere and does something and makes a decision. So some of that is what they're cutting, and some of it is, I think, a failure of translation to the medium. And I mean, the movies, the Potter movies themselves always had that sense of a Cliff's Notes experience. Like and the movies have, their own charm, and occasionally they even add scenes that are pretty interesting and fun, but it's very much like what you were describing, Brenton, of kind of jumping from plot point to plot point to get through everything as quickly as possible, not really taking the time to seed in the mysteries and really get to know the characters and have that sense of life and kind of mundanity behind it as well.
But in the Potter movies, what we got was, like, when they did that, then there'd be like an aerial shot of Hogwarts and the Hogwarts theme playing, and so then 10 things can be happening simultaneously, like Quidditch practice and I don't know, people in the quad or like in the yard or whatever, animals eating each other, whatever. All that can be happening in about 6.5 seconds of sweep, right? Okay. We don't have the orientation in the world to do this, right? And we move from thing to thing, and what's his name? Nadalum? Is that the name of the wizard, whose lead is brother, I guess. So
Yusuf.
Yusuf. Yeah, sorry, Yusuf Kama. Yeah.
Right,
So
Yeah.
so like he's showing up and he's doing it's just we're missing a lot of. I think they just thought he didn't really work on film. I bet there's got to be 3 more minutes of him, because we're just kind of jumping from his scene to his scene, and he's sick and he's falling down, and then he's in the room, and then he's gone, and he's holding people up by wand, and it's just
he's got a thing in his eye. He's got a thing in his eye.
Right, with no context for why and how the thing. I think there's the one scene of him kind of in the bathroom putting an eye drop in, and then he puts them in their little dungeon in the sewer, and then he collapses.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, not now."
Right, there's more to that story. I hope there better be more to that story.
Yeah, and what did they do with this evil parasite? They give it to the baker.
I'm worried Jacob has it now.
Yeah.
Because Jacob had it on the tweezer, and then he walks out, and then it's just gone, and then he breaks Nicholas Flamel's hand 4 times.
Yeah.
And what happened to the thing?
Right. But see, if this were a Potter book, and I'm rereading them now, I would expect that to be paid off later on. The MacGuffin or the clue, the red herring, that seems like just a random detail that disappears and you forget about it. Surely by the end of the film, or 3 films on, that's going to turn up to be important. I don't expect that to be true in this case. I don't know if anybody disagrees with me. I
think this wizard's toast. I don't think he worked very well.
And I mean, maybe the eye parasite is one example of that, but do we have the sense that things that don't make sense now are going to pay off later on? Are they crazy like a fox, or is it that we have just random little bits of things that don't work and they sort of abandoned that and moved on to the next thing?
I think one of the biggest things people were confused about was actually the plot of this movie. I think, and who was related to who, and what was going on, and there's so much exposition because I think they knew that moviegoers wouldn't understand what was happening, and they knew they had to explain it, and then it's not even explained very well, I think. So I don't know. There's two things. There's the small things that may or may not show up later, and then there's the things that don't make sense even within this film. And so I can't imagine that there's going to be the smaller things explained later, because they didn't really even do a good job, I think, explaining the big things. I think that was one of this movie's biggest faults.
They don't make the other era, the era that say that the Dan Brown films do, where it's all explainy, right? Because they've got this kind of complex intellectual structure behind it, the conspiracy theory world that they're hopping onto. And so then there's all these, oh, is that right? Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, could that really happen? So there's not a lot of that in the film, but they go the other way. And so you get about 14, words is meant to explain this entire shift that takes place, and why we're at a circus, cool circus. I don't know why we're there. And and how does everybody in France know to go to the same spot? Is that the only place to go in Paris? Is the circus? Maybe it's the Diagon Alley, I guess. So.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But when we walked in, I was like, is it just always a circus in Paris, in magical Paris?
And I think it's a Hobbiton circus. If you take a look at the dragon that kind of flashes into the sky, the fireworks dragon at the beginning of the circus scene when Tina goes in, and then kind of comes down into the crowd, and there's a big banner in the back that looks like Bilbo's banner. I thought that was kind of an interesting homage, or just need to borrow stuff. I don't know what accident, whatever happens there. But yeah, so I guess that squares the Diagon Alley of Paris. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, so usually I know this kind of stuff. Sorry, Kelly, what's that?
I was saying I actually quite liked that. It reminded me of Diagon Alley but also like a speakeasy of the 20s, or so like only certain people could go in, with certain people being wizards, but also like it's the secret kind of circus, and if you knew that it was happening, you could go in. I thought it was really cool. I think the statue that like started moving was very, very like original Harry Potter.
Lifting her skirts so that you can. Right. Yeah, it was very suggestive. She was loving that role too. She had that little smirk on. She's like, yeah, come on down.
It's French. Les French. Oui. Bienvenue.
There's something like a wink up to the moving statues when you go to cities, and there's always somebody dressed as like the Eiffel Tower who's like still until you kind of realize that, like I feel like it was kind of playing with that too.
Yeah. And then for $2 you get a picture with them, right? So.
Right. That's funny. I was just at a local library, did a big Harry Potter festival this Halloween, and they had some of those moving statue, at least one guy who was dressed in like, he had like all white, he was like powdered and he was, looked like a statue, and then like you walk past and he moves or like taps you with his cane or whatever. It's cool. So,
that's cool.
Definitely a Harry Potter sort of element.
Yeah. Well, when you say, Emily, that you kind of questions, are they actually plot points or are they character connections?
I have so many questions. Yes, they are that. They're all those things.
I have questions about motivations. To me, so obviously the design was beautiful. They're pretty good at that. Music is good as always. I actually liked a lot of the characters as well, but motivation is really where I want to talk about tonight at some point, just because I didn't understand, or I don't know that they sold well all the motivation moments in the film. So yeah, that's where my questions lie. So
agreed. Yeah.
I feel like go ahead, Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say going back to like, is this movie too short, too long? I think they had too many. It's all high plot, high action, high big character changes, and it's too much going on in a film, I think. And I agree that character motivations, the things some characters said, like the "I don't do sides" from Newt, I thought was kind of silly to hear from somebody. And then of course, I'm sure we'll talk about Queenie, which just was so unconvincing. I thought Grindelwald himself was extremely unconvincing, and I just thought it was very poorly done.
Oh, that was the worst death of a character I've ever seen, was Queenie, and she didn't die, right? Like, I don't know. She was off from the beginning. Like, I didn't think any of it was good.
It is a huge disservice to her in this movie. I think she stole every scene in the first one. And
I had issues with her. I liked her in the first film, but I remember the very first time you see her, she's like half naked, and strange men walk in, and she does not put her clothes on. Maybe that's just really Midwestern of me to raise my eyebrow at that, but
I put clothes on when strange men come by. But
this is the 20s. Like, this is the 20s in the United States. Like, is that really going to happen? There's something a little off about her.
Nah, I don't think that. I think her response to that is like, don't worry. I know lots of men think that what you were thinking when they first see me. She hears those thoughts. She knows those thoughts. Like, she knows that that's what's happening. I think it takes a lot to phase her, which is why in this movie I thought it was just a complete like change of character, because when you can hear everybody and understand everybody so well, or at least hear them, I just think, I don't know. I think it was just terrible.
Yeah,
so,
is it a kill?
We actually do have a slide about what I'm calling, quote, the main characters, which it's a question to me if they're even the main characters. if we keep going. There we go. So yeah, I like the idea. We're also getting some feedback, so if everybody can like check their earbuds and.
I'm sorry, I just looked at I have this stupid iPhone with the wrong jack, so I don't know where my old phones are. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm hearing it, and I even have my earphones in, so yeah. Would it help if I took them out?
I don't think so. I think if people aren't talking, maybe put yourself on mute and then unmute. We can just experiment and see what'll fix it. So on the subject of Queenie, I like the idea of one of the kind of main characters, or one of the good guys, getting sucked into the Grindelwald sort of plot, and kind of, if we're going to take the seduction of his ideology seriously, it's useful to have that. But maybe kind of what I'm hearing from the group is that was that not earned within this film? Because I don't even know that I dislike the idea of it being Queenie per se. But again, in the kind of rush to fit in the amount of stuff that happened in this movie, are there scenes missing on the cutting room floor that, would have given motivation or half steps that we needed to take in order to get her to that place? Because I think what I'm struggling with is, what is it about him that communicates to her that it's going to be something that allows her love for Jacob to really flourish? Because that's kind of what it comes down to, is that if with this guy in charge, things will change. And I get that there's troubles with the way the current administration is handling Muggle relations, but what is it about Grindelwald that's supposed to change that in her mind? I think that's where I'm sort of struggling.
I have the same question. I thought it was completely missing.
Yeah, nuts. Like she leaves him for the sake of his love?
For being with him? Like she leaves him so that she could be with him.
So that she could theoretically be with him rather than actually be with him. So
right.
Yeah, it's just maybe we should just leave Queenie. Nothing fits. I think it's an error. Maybe they could have gotten us to that point. I think she's, maybe the mental breakdown of thoughts in her head is interesting or something, but she needed to be like an addict or something. You know what I mean? Like when she shows up with him all hyped up on Love Potion, they kind of needed to have she needed to need that, or there needed to be some motivation, right? So Lita Lestrange is all motivation, right? So her whole character development is about motivation and choice. So great, so that we know that they can do this. What's her motivation? And Queenie's is all over the place. I think it's just a mess. Maybe we should just I don't know that we can add anything to what was just, I think, the biggest error in 10 films.
Chris asked, and this again I think is from the Hogwarts Professor website, is Queenie out of her mind or crazy like a fox? Is there, again, with Rowling, who we I think all admit is quite adept at planting seeds and misleading you with twists that don't pay off for years and entire novels and films later. Do we see any potential that she's there as a double agent or a spy, or is there ulterior motive going on here? Emily, you look skeptical.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to say the Queenie subplot, or the Queenie, I guess it's a subplot. It didn't bother me all that much. Yes, I mean, it's ironic in all the ways that we've, you were saying, she wants to be with him in theory more than she wants to be with him in reality. But that's, I think, one of the sad ironies. I don't know, I think that stuff does happen. And I didn't really have a terrible problem with how it went with Queenie, mainly because, now, I know where the film is going to lead. The questions I have around that are we going to get Queenie back in one film, or is it going to take all 5 for us to get Queenie back, for her to come full circle? So that's what interests me about that. Now, I would say in critique of it that I saw it coming a mile away, of her joining Grindelwald. It was as soon as she sat down in the rain and was hearing all those voices, which that's another one of my myriad questions. It's like, what does she always hear everybody's voices? Like, what was it about that moment where she was hearing all those? Was it that they were in French? What was the problem with her hearing all those voices? Like, isn't that like a main? Like, isn't that just why she like stays home and hangs out in her slip? What, that she just doesn't want to hear all these, the voices on the street. How far away does she have to be? Do they self-translate in her head? Is it like the TARDIS? I have so many questions about that. But
she's a time god, really. It's actually a secret. It's sort of an Easter egg moment. Well, she's very good looking, so I suspect she'll be in 2 or 3 more films.
Right. But will she be, redeemed in them? Will she kind of come back to the side of good and be a full, or will this take until the 5th film?
Well, what are we missing with Grindelwald? So Grindelwald, I actually liked so if we compare like what Star Wars has done with the Hitler conversation, but basically kind of repainting the entire scene of Hitler speaking before the troops, right? So in this one, it's completely different. The Hitler character, the Grindelwald speech, like the Rheinstadt speech of 1940, this is the moment that Hitler kind of pitches to the world, right? And he pitches this impassioned speech, and C.S. Lewis said that when he was listening to it, for a moment he was lost in the argument, and that he could actually go with this person. And that's what we're supposed to get in this moment with Grindelwald, but he's not he's not that. He's the reasoned middle way. He's not even a religious zealot. He's here we are. Could you turn that back on, Carrie? Sorry, I just got the lights turned out on me. He's a reasoned kind of character, and because of that, we get this different feel. Did it work? I don't know. It makes the Ministry of Magic look like extremists, right? So in that sense, it works.
Right. And I think there's something effective to, I know it sounded like from reviews and chatter online that this rubbed some people the wrong way, but I thought the kind of glimpse of the Second World War was pretty effective. That, for the generation of people who lived through World War I, which was the Great War, the war to end all wars, the idea of there being another war is a horrific enough idea to, kind of fearmonger and stoke the retaliation against the Muggles. Again, to bring in Queenie, I'm not quite sure how you reconcile that with also sending the message of inclusion towards Muggles, that there will be a place for them in, maybe it's possible to send both those messages at the same time, but I'm not quite sure that Grindelwald successfully did that in the speech that we saw in the screen.
No, but the fact that you just said a place, right? It's the word that Hitler used, Lebensraum, living room, that he went with the fact that it's actually we're under pressure, and it's not that we're trying to really negate others at this stage.
Right.
It's that we're just simply trying to make a space for ourselves, and
we're the ones under threat. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
We have a historical or divine or scientific reason to be here in this moment. And so I think the messaging is pretty close, and the move is fairly close as well. But it's Hitler in 37 or 38, not Hitler in 27. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it works. What would we need to hear to kind of be won over to the side of exclusion as an audience? And I think that's a big gap that any storyteller has a challenge with, is how do we empathetically move into the space of the villain in this case when it comes to racism.
And I felt like that subtlety wasn't even performed at all. There was no moment where I felt any sort of like, oh, I can see how someone could hear what they want to hear and what Grindelwald is saying. There was not even a point of that for me. So I'm right there with you. Like, if you don't win over your audience, you're not gonna. How can you win over a character and have that audience believe that character?
Yeah.
Right. Or if we could, maybe we know Grindelwald's the bad guy. There's no getting us on his side. But if you can get us on Queenie's side, that goes a long way.
If we can understand how Queenie would take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's almost
so
like
I hope that there's more of that, of like they need to really build up her motivation and kind of have us in sympathy with her. Find this a convincing and attractive sort of move.
Yeah, it's almost like in the Star Wars prequels. I mean, I think one thing that they do, the Revenge of the Sith does really well, is like you're right there with Padme, and you kind of have a front row seat to what's happening with Anakin. You're there with Padme, and you're there with Obi-Wan, and you're watching what's happening, and you do have that ability to really get in their shoes. But yeah, I'm not sure that was altogether here. But if I can just ask one of my many questions regarding the scene where he projects the World War II stuff, what an amazing hookah he has. It's like, it's a skull, it's a pensieve kind of, it's a hookah.
It's called Skull Hookah in the screenplay.
It's called Skull Hookah?
It's called Skull Hookah.
Of course, because what else is it? It's a thing where he spits his ideas at people, I guess. But yeah, that's one of the many magical elements that I was like, can we get the Pottermore entry on that sooner than later?
I also don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure it worked totally for me, but
yeah, I was gonna say I also don't know how he was able to see the future. Like, we know that that's what happened in the 40s, but
Oh yeah, what's his machinery for that?
Yeah,
I thought that too. I was just like, just because we know that this actually did happen and we know it's truth, like, this is beyond any prophecy that we've seen in the world of Harry Potter thus far. And then to be able to project that prophecy to people when you're not a seer, like, I just didn't quite get that, and I didn't know how that happened. And he's so skilled. Yeah,
right.
He basically is skilled in every single magical feat. Like, that just, I mean.
But I know he's got the Elder Wand, but what are the parameters of this guy's power?
Right. It just seemed completely unstoppable.
I mean, in the first scenes, I was really excited because I kind of didn't quite get this the first time I saw it. I was just kind of along for the ride. But the second time, I actually went and saw it today at a matinee. And I was really impressed in the first scenes because we're seeing not just Grindelwald's power, but we're seeing the power of the Elder Wand, and all the stunts that he pulls and the filling the carriage with water from the river and just like really twisted, cool magic, for an evil guy, But then now that we're talking about this, showing them these future scenes, like, where is he getting? Where's the footnote on that? Like, where's that coming from, buddy?
Yeah.
Right. I don't actually, that's good. So I'm also reading with Kat. I think I'm just probably behind Kat in the 5th book, reading through the Harry Potter. But there's a point where someone says, not everybody's made up of I think Sirius says it, and not everybody's made up of Death Eaters or Ministry officials or something. I can't remember. Death Eaters.
People and Death Eaters.
Good people and Death Eaters. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And okay, so well, are we trying to compleximicate that, or are we actually, or is there actually something else going on? And I think what Rowling's trying to do is change the twin dynamic from Dumbledore Grindelwald to Newt Grindelwald. And so there's moments that twinning takes place. So for example, Grindelwald's holding a beast and is able to kind of soothe and communicate with the beast, but then chucks it away, right? And then we get the same thing with the same thing with Credence, right? Is a beast tamer, right? And so Credence sits between Grindelwald and Newt on the question of beast. And the same thing that the glowing skull-shaped hookah, right? Actually, Newt uses a wand-like kind of blowing gold dust kind of thing that's very similar to the circus in order to track the history of these things. And we're starting to see, and and I have a question that we can either leave or we may not know the answer to, but we're starting to see this building of Newt's power, and he's very, very strong wizard. And a building of Tina's power. Is this the twinning? Is this Newt's moving up towards Grindelwald as the twin until Dumbledore is ready to show himself? Or is this just, do we actually just have an inflation of magic? Right? Because like fifth year at Hogwarts is just so far away from anything that's happening here. Like what happens in a wizard's life between when they finish at age 18 and they can now get like a handful of newts and they can, like, you know, repair an entire city in tandem, or chase somebody's footprints across continents or whatever, right? That's or build an entire world like his cryptozoological world, right, in a suitcase. That's many
magnitudes of power that we're and so part of it is, to what extent are these things contradictions of the parameters of the magic as we know them from the books, or is it that, well, the parameters of the magic of the books were school kids, and this is what grown-ups do, right? So Curtis, there's a slide in the beginning of the line about you never met a monster you couldn't love, which I feel like is relevant to this question.
You go back one. Yeah.
You had it a second ago. Because I feel like this twinning and parallelism kind of works also with this question of the two halves of this story. Like, on the one hand, these are the kind of this is the magical voyage of the Beagle. Like, we're with the wizarding Charles Darwin as he discovers magical creatures and teaches us about them. And on the other hand, we have the kind of Grindelwald Dumbledore, this is the, wizarding history of the world wars. And I am still trying to figure out to what extent I feel like those two things are successfully melded in these movies. And then I think that's true within the characters as well. Like, you never met a monster you couldn't love is clearly kind of playing with that duality. Like, yes, Newt loves beasts, but also like his ability to empathize with the monster in the human characters as well. So, even within this movie, like, we have the literal beasts on the right, we've got the human monsters on the left, people who do unconscionable things, and then we have those kind of in the middle that are, Nagini and Credence are sort of halfway in between. They're sort of people struggling with their darkness, but there's also an aspect of the literal beast to them too. Good slide. These are, thank you. But I hadn't quite thought of it in the terms of, Brenton saying, like, it's still the twinning, but maybe not the characters we would have thought of. It's not necessarily the Grindelwald Dumbledore duology as much as Grindelwald Newt, the two halves of the story. How do we kind of reconcile them is sort of the question.
Well, one of the biggest things I think the original Harry Potter series is about, one of the biggest sort of underrated things, is how, well, maybe not underrated, because anyone who's read the novels has seen this, but how creatures are treated, and how people, what's the quote from Dumbledore or Sirius? Those, you can tell a lot from a person of how they treat those that are lesser than them. And that is actually huge in the Harry Potter series. And I think that carries over in these movies. And I actually pretty strongly believe that she chose Fantastic Beasts with this in mind. I think J.K. Rowling very much wants to set up this duality of Newt treating creatures like he would anyone, any human, anybody in between, any beast, and the caretaking side of Newt, I think, is supposed to be very much contrasted with the using of people that Grindelwald does so much, and the manipulation. He quite, literally and figuratively puts people in chains, and Newt frees them. And I think that duology, that those contrasts are made pretty clear. And there's also something I noticed, couldn't help but notice. I think it's in the last few scenes. Grindelwald has this little green pocket square in his pocket, and I think I can't see it as anything else than a direct correlation to Newt's bow treacle, his little green bow treacle in his pocket. And I just was screaming in my head that they're set up as contrasts. Grindelwald has this little green pocket thing in his right on the side that Newt usually keeps and takes care of his creature. And so that was a very kind of small but important thing I saw as a total mirroring effect for me, at least.
Yeah, and Kelly, your thesis is on the Beast in Harry Potter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It is. Yeah. And trying to figure out what these movies are. Yeah. So
when Newt gives the blood promise to Dumbledore, the physical representation, the enjeweled blood promise or whatever it is, he does say, Grindelwald doesn't value things that are small, or things that are too small. Like, he doesn't understand things that are too small for him to value. So this is what we're waiting for, which we don't know yet, is the Sauron flaw in Grindelwald. We don't really have that. Right. We find out, and we don't find out, it's staying alive, right? It's life and death for Voldemort, right? In the end, his bid to stay alive is what ultimately makes him die, and he doesn't understand love, right? These are sort of some of the flaws. What's the Sauron flaw in Grindelwald? And you, Kelly, may have, I mean, that if you're right, that's what it's building towards, is that he'll ultimately miss the smallest thing in his world that causes everything to unravel. So although we do know from other history kind of how it goes down in movie 5, I guess, at least one scene in movie 5 we know about, but but of course this could be just a Gothic film, right? Like, we're starting to see the trend. We're seeing the twinning, we're seeing the relational splits, we're seeing the two people, one people thing, and we're seeing blood as a center image. Once again, we have a whole series that's set up around the idea of blood purity and blood relationships, and this one intensifies on blood relationships, because it's all about who am I, or a bunch of it, who am I related to, and how is blood connected to that,
and who did I choose, right?
And whose blood's on my hands, and things like that. So it's so those two things fit well into the Gothic frame, actually, the blood and the winning.
Well, you guys are helping me answer one of my many questions, and a few of my questions relate to, like, why certain characters are in the film at all, and a big one is Nagini. I have to say, today when I was watching it, I was like, so it's making more sense to me why she is in this film. I'm not sure it had to be Nagini,
Sure,
in terms of making that connection with the twinning and the
Right.
monster within or whatnot. But that's one area that I struggle, like, especially given the kind of controversy around her role and character, and having her played by an Asian woman, but I'm a little bit more sympathetic now to her presence in the story, I think, now, with the connections you're making.
That's one where, I mean, controversy aside, at the end of the day, 5 films later, we may decide that wasn't a well done decision, for sure. But in terms of what was the point of her in these movies, like what's she contributing to the story, that's one where I feel like there's going to be more. She has to talk to. This was a prelude to some greater involvement down the line. I can't see that there's any reason to introduce her with that name, with that history, and not sort of have that, like with Dumbledore, she's really the main bridge to the Potter stories, right? Like the one character, maybe Nicholas Flamel as well. Like, there's only a few characters that actually do appear later on. And
he's on my list. Nicholas Flamel is also on my list of people I'm like, why are you in this movie? You have a house that is safe.
It's just and he's not there when they get there.
That's weird.
Why are we there? Yeah. And
I was confused. Yeah, it is.
That was definitely one of those, like, we're missing something moments where, oh wait, they're in the safe house, but they're not here. Who lives here? This is confusing. Whereas I feel like and I could be wrong, Flamel, I feel like, to me, was more of a cameo. Like, here's a shout out to a character and a name that we know. Whereas I feel like Nagini, I expect more from her in the later films. Yeah, and partly because I'm intrigued by the fact that she ends up with the good guys at the end, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting her and Credence, in Camp Grindelwald by the end of it. So the fact that there's this split, because there's so much in the promotion, was the two of them together. And because we know that she, at least in snake form, goes on to be aligned with Voldemort, I'm intrigued by the fact that she's, for the moment, team Newt and Dumbledore.
Yeah. It's almost like we're going to see her go towards the dark side, as it were, and Queenie come back to the light side, because we thought the opposite was going to happen, maybe not in this movie, but ultimately. So I almost wonder if those are going to be done at the same time, or if those timelines sort of will align at all, or.
Right.
I'm really curious to see how that's going to happen.
And that's a very Potter thing, to have the characters that look like one thing on the surface not do what you expect. Like Snake Woman goes with the good guys, and I hate myself for comparing Queenie to Umbridge. But there's a lot of pink with Queenie.
Yeah, that's true.
She's beautiful, and she's pink, and she's feminine, and she's sweet. She seems to be good. She seems to be everything we like. And she's the one, not Nagini, who goes off with, Wizard Hitler. So
she's manipulative too.
That's very Rowling. I feel like normally we don't see the germ of that. It's like it's more like you meet a character and they're already established, and then you find out they're not what you think. And I almost feel like she's playing with, like, what's the origin of that? How do these characters that what they are inside doesn't match the outside? How do they get to the place where, when Harry meets them, he can make a snap judgment based on what they look like on the surface, not really understanding what's going on underneath?
That could be, though, a correction error that's taking place. And so I'm going to say something that's a highly complex discussion point. And the insides matching the outside, this is what our older fantasy authors love to do, right? Orcs are orcish, right? And shrews are shrewish, and so on, right? And that had a synchronicity and a beauty. But now in our sort of class and race and body consciousness, this is uncomfortable for us. And I mean, in a sense, the Nagini Asian actress thing is dumb, and because the film's filled with different kind of cultural backgrounds and stuff. So it's not like she was the only minority on a pasty white set. But and if you actually watch the credits, the teams that have made it up are actually, the names are quite diverse in the teams of people that have made this film. But there is the question: do we match? The insides match the outside? And in the Harry Potter books, you have the answer is often, but not always, and they're not always as critical. And so in some ways, it's a Umbridge is a toad. Right, and a toady, and she's all those things, and she is that, but Hagrid is not, unintelligent, uncaring, gruff, and all those things. And so the not is important, but it's always braced against the essentialism. Exactly. And I don't think she has the freedom to do that anymore in these films, and I think she's missing a place to put her feet in order to brace against, to give us the feint, to give us the pull away. I think she's lacking that kind of nice essentialistic moment there. So that's my thought. She might be overcorrecting a little bit because she took 15 years to write the Harry Potter books, but they were all written, 1 hour in 1992, and they're all still there, right? And now she's not there. She's moved on. It's 2018. That's not that long ago. That's however many years ago. And 25 years ago. And so things have changed, and she just can't do it anymore. And she may be overcorrecting a little bit in this case.
That's funny. Kat and I were just at the Chestnut Hill Harry Potter conference, and we heard Lauren Camachi talk about physiognomy in Harry Potter, and that, very Victorian quality of associating facial features with personality traits, and this kind of a specious science of understanding personality based on physical traits, and how Rowling does. I mean, that was her whole thesis, is that Rowling falls into this quite routinely. But you're right. I mean, there are notable exceptions, and I think that's where the real interest lies. But she's not writing for children here.
These are adult.
Yeah, that was a structure she used to communicate, personality traits, and it was humorous as well. I mean, it's funny that Umbridge is a toad face, and their comments, it invites all these comments by the characters, and that amuse us, but it may be in kind of a cruel way, really.
But it's also perspectival. Those books are from the Harry Potter trio, right? And so they're largely told from that perspective.
I think that makes a big difference. I mean, books versus film, for one thing, of narrative description versus celluloid, that we all kind of are in theory saying the same thing. Although even that's, I guess, up to debate. But are these being mediated through a particular person's point of view? Versus, I think we tend to presume, whether or not it's true, that if we see a film, what we're seeing is like the objective truth of the camera, the characters as they are on the outside, not as Harry experiences them.
Yeah, I think they're shaded film. The books are shaded books, at least the Harry Potter books. I think the films, I don't think they're conscious of that, but they would be too, based on the scripts. I would love to sit down and read these films as 750-page novels, where we have the time to kind of build up and set the scene and all that. We don't have that. What I do find interesting on essentialism, so Beatrix Lestrange, Lady Lestrange, which is an interesting family kind of trickle down that we have. What's her monstrosity?
Lita Lestrange's monstrosity? That she killed her brother, right?
But she that's not her monstrosity, right? And it's not, it's not that she's rejected. It's not that she's black. Her monstrosity is that she believes she killed her brother.
Yeah.
And there are some subtleties, I think, in the film, even if they sometimes kind of come off awkwardly, is that she makes this unnecessary sacrifice well, it could have been necessary if she was powerful enough to do it, but she makes this unnecessary sacrifice out of guilt. Her monstrosity does get her killed. Her monstrosity is her own self-condemnation. And it's actually it's interesting what Newt says. You know, it's not you didn't mean to do it. It's not your fault. Well, that's not exact. And I'm actually speaking out of a place of knowledge here. It's my fault in a certain way that my father and my baby brother died. I was the cause in a certain kind of way, but I wasn't the cause in a moral, responsible way. And as a teenager, right after that happened, of course I spun, and it took people kind of bringing me in and explaining causation in new ways. And Beatrix or Lita never had that mentor, that person. She lives in this energetic rejection of the other, and Newt is not able to win into her enough to make that change, right? And so she lives with this false sense of causation. That's her monstrosity. If we could get that kind of complexity out of the films, I'd be pretty pleased. So then I could know what Grindelwald, what's going on, what's his thing, and we may have that complexity with Credence once we get over the family issues, as he's going to have all these forces to reckon with. He's still open, I think. I don't know. Maybe film 4 is like Creedence Clearwater Revival or something. It's the focus on that. I'm not sure he's the weapon or not. I mean, he's the nuclear bomb, right? This is what everybody's racing towards, the A-bomb in the film, and I just don't know if he'll be it or not. So.
One thing I hope we touch on is the way that the Mirror of Erised is used in this film.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a departure. My first instinct was like, no, I don't want a pensieve of Erised. No, I don't want that. I want that Mirror of Erised to be what it is, which is something that shows you your deepest desire. But then when I was watching the film today, I had a little more, chance to take in what was happening. And I mean, obviously his deepest desire at the moment is to reobtain that blood promise. But you only get that at the very end. What he's looking at is, are we to presume from this that his deepest desire is for this relationship to be restored? This relationship.
Is brotherhood?
That's the ambiguity, right? Is he looking at the blood pact, or is it a return to the moment when that was made?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, or both, either. Unable to separate the two. I think that's deliberately ambiguous. I'm not saying you have to like it, but I imagine my crit fic is that they want you to not be quite sure which it is.
But the complexities of siblinghood, see, that's just not an elegant word, is it? Right? Brotherhood in the film is rich and complex, right? So you've got Newt and his brother, you've got Tina and Queenie, and you've got who is Credence's sibling, and then we've got all these half relations, and then the film ends with the revelation that Credence is brother. Right, and so we've got Dumbledore yearning for brotherhood more than anyone else, and then he's supplied a brother in the text or in the film. Whether that's real or not, I don't know. And so, I think I know, but we don't know. And so it's actually kind of a rich siblinghood is really kind of a really interesting theme. But what does it do? Where does it go? And how's it related to blood? Right.
That's really good.
I just thought also of the half elf woman.
Yeah.
And how does she fit into this whole?
I thought she was just a little person.
No, it says that she's half elf in the dialogue.
It does say that, yeah.
And I had. Speaking of my list of questions, it got longer.
Why can't they just let her be a little person? I never really didn't.
She's actually half elf, half human.
Yeah.
Specifically, like I guess we probably didn't need that clarified, but that's what the text says.
Right.
Half elf, half something else. Yeah, I don't know.
So that's intriguing in terms of this, I mean, I don't consider house elves to be monsters, but from a blood purity standpoint, that would be pretty monstrous, monstrous combination there. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting. She's kind of an interesting figure. I'd like to I wonder if she's going to play in, if we just heard the last of her, or if she's going to spin out to be important, and we're going to hear more about the story of why there's a half elf, and if there are other half elves, in this story. It was just something that was. I'm almost, more interested in things like that seem to work well than the recycling of, well, of course, if we're in Paris, then we have to visit Nicholas Flamel because we already know him, and Dumbledore, of course, he would send him to Nicholas Flamel's house, the safe house. I'm like, okay, right. There's the Philosopher's Stone, there it is. Okay, now I'm more interested in
what people call the fan service things of put in the references that makes Potter fans go, I know what that is.
The Quidditch team that flies by, on their way to the pit. It's like
I like that kind of stuff.
It's fun to see, but
I could do without it.
Yeah, is that right, Ellie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sort of like, I like. There was so much potential with this film. If they had stripped out and made a clean adventure, like one of the things I liked about the Harry Potter books and films is that they were, at least the first 5 or whatever, they're mysteries. They're soft mysteries, like the way that Terry Pratchett laces in a mystery into a book that's not really a mystery, right? And that's, kids like that, adults like that, and we have the roots of that here. They have to all find each other and stuff, but then we're kind of missing that human element of finding and guidance and luck and meeting the right people. That those meetings just seem kind of awkward and weird, and it's just difficult. Yeah, and I struggle.
I think I'm missing the point of view in that. I think what she really figured out how to do well was to tell the mystery with you figuring out the steps with the character.
Yeah.
Both in order, in a way that you solve the mystery in a way that actually is solvable and kind of makes a logical sense. And also she's able to mislead you with that and to make you think the wrong thing at the moment you're supposed to think it, and to place all the clues in front of you and yet just nudge your view so much to the right that you miss the essential thing, and yet when you go back it was all there. And I think that having, I guess Newt is ostensibly our protagonist, but really, like, that's not how this works.
Well, we need like 6 or 7 more minutes of him talking to Kowalski or whatever his name is. Jacob, like, so building up things like, well, who is it that you really love, and like, why are we caring that we hunt somebody down, and who's this Lestrange gal, and do you really love her, and like because we don't know any of those things, and ambiguity is good, where she kind of says I love you, and she looks at both brothers and then dies, right? So that's interesting. Who is she talking to? Maybe she's talking to both, right? And but where is is Newt just playing it until he finds out which character dies first, and then he'll go for the other one? And this is I think we could use more human. We get the frailty and the power in Newt. It's a nice combination, but I think we need the friendship. Yeah, and he's getting some mentorship from Albus Dumbledore, but it's not going to ever be terribly satisfying, is it, with that character?
Dumbledore's mentorship is not, by definition, satisfying.
I would send him back to a training program. Yeah.
I actually hope that Dumbledore learns from Newt. I think I see great potential in there. With that, the last scene in particular, you see them. You see Newt explain what we've already touched upon, the fact that Grindelwald missed the smallest little thing right underneath his eye, the niffler, because he wasn't paying attention to something he thought wasn't important, or someone he thought wasn't important. And I think that care and attention to creatures and animals and to people and people's stories is one that I would love to see Dumbledore learn from Newt. I don't know how successful he is when it comes to actually the Harry Potter novels and how he treats Harry, because he does still use him to certain effect. But I see so much potential in Newt being a mentor to Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Did anyone else enjoy Jude Law, Dumbledore's initial meeting place for himself and Newt on top of St. Paul Cathedral? I'm like, okay, thank you. Yes, we know he is a god figure. Thanks for that.
Well, that's
First,
just
I do like a view.
Dumbledore's nothing if not extra. Like,
He's so extra.
That's like,
He's
isn't that
extra
just
god.
4 years after Chesterton's Ball and Lacrosse that starts and ends starts in the top of St. Paul's Cathedral? Is that
Never
right?
read that.
I haven't read that. That's a great reference.
So
though.
yeah,
Intertextual.
so I'm sure that's just. I mean, it's St. Paul's. Like it's going to be partly bombed out in the war, right? So this is not that important, but yeah.
Right. We get a nice pre-blitz view of the skyline here.
Yeah. It's a beautiful film. Like I would love to go and spend another $100 and sit and just let it kind of wash over me without critical.
I thought that just in terms of visually, I thought it was a big improvement from the first one. The first had a very New York felt very much like a CGI / backlot to me. Whereas this, I think, maybe going to Paris and London, the fact that they kind of had locations that they could really do some filming in rather than kind of try to create it in some, soundstage, in England, it had a much better look to me in general.
I do think that the producers of Sherlock, though, could have really helped make this space as part of the essential character.
Sure.
Right, in the way that city rings throughout the entire series, right? I think that could be even better done. Like Grindelwald takes over some aristocratic household, some brownstone in Paris. It's just a random brownstone. It doesn't seem to make any difference which one it is.
Right. I should clarify, when I say better, I don't mean great.
Yeah. No. I still think, and I interrupted Emily, I'm sorry, but I think they could use some help on this one.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I appreciated how this film, the U.S. was definitely more marginal to the story here, because I just remember in the first film, although, I mean, overall, I really liked that film, and I definitely liked it better than this one. I just felt like she's in trouble when she strays onto U.S. soil, because there's something going on there. There's some assumptions or something, but she just has repeatedly got herself in trouble with perspective on the U.S. And I didn't, there's an overarching message of British people need to come over and fix our backwater, views, and our, need to solve our problems and then go back, so that I was kind of relieved that we were not, although I don't know, maybe, we should ask, some French people how they feel about some of the lines about Queenie saying, I don't know if you're being funny or if you're just French.
Or just French. I actually like that line. I think the one that pointed out last time we got together that I thought it was sort of an anti-American film, the last one. I understand that you want to say something. I think our problem in these films is that she's trying to say too many things, and there's a story there, and she will find the story. Like if this one did this a little bit, I think it'll solidify over the next couple of films, and I think we'll have a pretty good series overall. And filmmaking's changing. We're being Netflixized. right?
Mhm.
So the Harry Potter films came on the heels of like the Lord of the Rings transformation, Peter Jackson transformation of film, and everything. And maybe one of the last films in that transformation was, Inception or something, right? These hugely, or Doctor Strange maybe, but these hugely visualistic films, and Black Panther has done a good job of it, but it's changing, and the world of filmmaking is changing, with and we'll see what Chronicles of Narnia is on Netflix, but if it's sort of like Anne with an E or Handmaid's Tale, like what kind of film is it going to be? It's not going to be like these Fantastic Beasts films. It's not going to. The music score is not going to sound the same. It's going to be darker and more complicit. And so, I don't know. It could be these films are coming a bit late. Things are happening quickly. Yeah.
Do we think it's a guarantee that we're going to get all 5 films?
I asked myself that question.
As much as anything is a guarantee, but
Sure.
I mean, it's
I
J.K.
think so.
Rowling.
I think so. I don't think it's done so poorly that the features, and I don't think it did great. Clearly, I mean, this had a lower opening weekend, I think, than any of the previous Wizard films. But I don't remember off the top of my head what the box office was, but I don't know that it did so poorly that they would just say, never mind. I could be wrong.
It wasn't an expensive film. Like, I can't remember, but I don't think it cost that much.
They definitely made their money back and then some.
Yeah. It was a $200 million film, and they've already tripled that at the box office. And they won't really have the international figures if they never have them for a few months. And so you're going to get $1 billion off of this, including syndication and DVD sales. So that's a 5-time investment. Is not bad on a soft film.
Right.
And so, we'll see whatever.
And how much is it about this bothers me in some ways, but it's not even so much about the film itself, but about the brand, and which is a problem. I think then maybe not enough attention is paid towards let's make this film the best it can be, but or paying as much attention to this is my Marvel. I'm going to get on my Marvel soapbox. I feel like the tendency is to always be looking to the future. And I feel like sometimes that encourages us, the viewer and the filmmaker, to not necessarily look at the thing that's you're working on right now or that's out. Right. And how much is it about, and maybe this is getting into that kind of Marvel mindset of it's all about the setup for what's coming. And I think we're losing a little bit. Right. And we're losing a little bit of, is this film a satisfying experience sort of on its own terms without waiting for the hindsight of all the later stories.
Right.
But it has to be lucrative just in terms of the merchandise, the theme park, all that stuff. Like, I really highly doubt they're not getting their money's worth out of it.
Right. But that's like the difference. So you're one of the richest women in the world. You're the most successful author ever. Author, one of the top ones. She can do whatever she wants, and I'm sure she's still listening if she logged in under a pseudonym, and Joanne Rowling is still listening.
Hi,
and
Joe.
I would say to you, Joe, tell the story that you want to tell. Damn the critics, right? And forget everything else, and get the right people to help you make this the best thing. The Black Panther film should be, everybody, I think it just got a dozen nominations. Everybody should be rethinking filmmaking at this kind of Fantastic Beasts scale after that film. And this could have been that, right? This could have been that level, and it could have been that good. She's gone to the continent. She can do anything she wants. Europe. It's diverse and linguistically different and beautiful and foreign to most of the film watchers. It's a chance to do whatever she wants. So do what you want, Joe.
Do what you want, but listen to your editors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Sure.
I think she needs to be edited, and I think what happens when people grow so big is they don't they don't get
Well,
edited
and
anymore.
there's a question, there's a difference, I think, between editing in the writing stage and editing in the editing room, because she's being edited. There are scenes
Yes.
Yeah.
all over the floor here, but
Yeah.
they're not resulting in something that makes a ton of sense.
It's
I
a
think
wrong
the
editing.
editing
It is
needs
after the
to
fact.
happen in the conception and the writing
Yeah.
stage of how are we crafting a narrative, and hopefully crafting it in a way that our solution at the end of the day is we have a 3-hour movie that we have to cut almost in half.
Agreed.
That's not hopefully the ideal scenario that's going to turn out with something that makes sense for the viewer.
I believe in you, Joe. I think like it's going back and forth. I think she also read the Cursed Child, script, and was like, oh, this rots. So I think it's like there's this kind of thing that takes place. I think she'll settle. Like, it's been, like, if you think artistically, it's been a struggle for her since she finished, and even the last couple books were really difficult for her to get finished. I think this has been difficult, and I hope that she lands well in the midst of the right team and the right people.
And I have
with her fortune to do it.
I have some hope. I mean, these are not comparable in their quality, but Chamber of Secrets is my least favorite of the books, and it's the second. I think the sophomore slump is a real phenomenon.
It really is. Yeah.
And hopefully what we see is, you start at a certain amount of strength, you have some growing pains, and then hopefully you steadily sort of work your way up as you figure out what you're doing. So
yeah.
I do want to make sure we spend some time on the Dumbledores and the reveal at the end here, because we can't leave without talking about, the ending and the question of Aurelius Dumbledore.
Or as Arthur Harrow says, Aurelius Dumbledore.
Oh, really?
Aurelius.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. Oh, really? Is he a Dumbledore? Do we believe this? I have the next slide, if Curtis will advance to it. I put together some timelines, and there's some funky math going on. All right, so let me write this down for you. There's the timeline. There's the timeline on the left as established in mostly the Harry Potter novels, a little bit of Pottermore. So in some other places, we have contradictory evidence. We have a prop, which is an official produced for the movie prop by Mina Lima Designs, which have apparently done the props for all the films, which list, it's hard to see on the slide, but they list his birth date as 1904.
The birth date of Credence?
Credence's birth date is listed as 1904. This is directly contradicted by the screenplay, which in that little blue square gives you scene 107, interior, ship's corridor, 1901, night. So this is when they're in the ship. Baby Credence is about to be swapped and saved.
Didn't it feel like the first film was like 5 years after the war, not 10 years after the war? Did anybody else feel like
it did, because Jacob had been still in Europe, but not for that long.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
He came home a little later, but not that late.
Right. So, and then our other kind of thing here is, so I guess this picture of Ezra Miller as Credence is based on the screenplay because they have a birth date of 1901. From 2 years ago, now this was before this film came out, Ezra Miller gave an interview where he said that Credence was 18 in 1926, which would make him 10 years or almost 8 years younger than what he's supposed to be in The Crimes of Grindelwald. All of this is complicated by the fact that by the late 1890s, Percival Dumbledore is in Azkaban, and a few years later, Kendra is killed. So even for Credence to be 26, which is what he's supposed to be in the screenplay, Percival and Kendra would have to have been together while Percival was in Azkaban, which means he got conjugal visits, I guess. I don't know how that works. And then if he was supposed to be born before Percival went to Azkaban, he has to be even older, possibly in his 30s. Shrug emoji. What do we do with this? Is this, again, is there method in the madness, or is she this bad at math? Is it a lie? Is this evidence that Grindelwald is full of it and he's telling tales to Credence to manipulate and seduce him?
Well, the problem is he's also telling those tales to us. And,
yes.
And that's the problem I have with it. You know, yeah.
Arthur says, is Grindelwald lying? Does a Nargle poop in the woods? It's a good question. Like,
we don't
is
know.
Grindelwald lying? Yes.
So
to what
okay,
extent? How big are his lies? I guess.
Can I share what B. Groves said to me in an email soon after the film was released, and she was looking at the script. I didn't have the script yet, but she was looking at the script, and she says, I've looked at the end of the script, and I think Rowling might be doing a narrative misdirection with the brother. The brother who hates him could be a different Dumbledore. No actual proof that it is Albus. So is this two children of Aberforths flown the nest before he became a barman, of whom we've heard previously nothing? Or could there have been a birth of twins from the teenaged Ariana? If he's her son, then she could have passed on her Obscurus. I mean, could that have happened? And she said, if this proves right 2 years from now, she'll be super excited. So I thought those were all interesting possibilities. We were kind of taking us outside of the realm of literal Albus Dumbledore is his brother. Maybe there's another Dumbledore that is
another way to interpret that. And I hadn't heard that. That's new to me, that he could be Ariana's son with the Obscurus passed on. I've certainly heard, that's a theory I've heard a lot, is that the Obscurus is Ariana's, whether or not Credence has any relationship to the Dumbledore family, because there are lines in the first film about the Obscurus surviving once the Obscurial dies, and Newt has one in his case. He has the African girl's Obscurus, right? So I don't know how long an Obscurus floats around the world looking for a host, but presumably Credence could be the the and so I guess that could explain the idea of this is the twin. This is what calls Fawkes potentially, because part of the evidence is we need a Dumbledore to call the Phoenix in here at the end. So those are interesting theories.
And didn't they Newt refer, or somebody referred to the Dark Twin, the Obscurus as the Dark Twin?
I forget.
Grindelwald, maybe. I think it might have been Grindelwald. Yeah.
Right.
Where the heck did the prophecy go? So when the thing fails, right? So we're told about the prophecy.
Right, of Nostra Magicus.
Yeah.
I've got it pulled up in a window.
Its name is Facus of Nostradamus, whatever that is, right?
Oh,
Tycho
Dodonus.
Tycho Dodonus. I know Dodonus, and I was like, General Dodonus? No, General Dodonna. Right. No. Sorry, Star Wars.
So I mean, this is one of my struggles. So we're told about a prophecy. Like, to me, Rowling would make the prophecy not come true based on everybody's reading, but really be true on a deeper level.
Right.
And so we want to see this prophecy come true. But we don't even get to hear it enough times, right? Dumbledore kind of interrupts at one point.
We only hear like snippets of it.
Yeah, and we should see it visually in some way. We should have a character kind of rolling it over in their head. Like, they should be sealing it in. And so just because it wasn't true of the tomb moment, right, of the siblings, it probably wasn't true.
Siblings,
yeah. And so I'm not sure. Like, Rowling misdirection, we may have actually a Phoenix come to Credence and it not be Fox or right? You know what I mean? So when we see the Phoenix in the next film, because it's all built up, we're going to see a Phoenix in the next film. It may not still be the truth, right? So I don't know. My money's on this is not Dumbledore's brother. That we're going to see Grindelwald keep playing this boy until he cracks, and Grindelwald underestimates some little thing in him that somebody else is able to tap into. Newt, Queenie, something. That's my money, is that he self-destructs rather than causes everybody else pain. But I don't know.
Arthur says Grindelwald has the Dumbledore blood from the Blood Pact. Is he calling the Phoenix? Although he doesn't have it at the end, right? It's taken from him by Newt at that point. So unless he has more of it, or maybe the Phoenix has already been called, and so that has potential.
Now Dumbledore's, to cancel what I said, Dumbledore's family is messed up enough to have a brother kicking around.
That's true, although I can buy that just because they're such a scandalous family. I think what I know has bothered a lot of people from what I've seen is the idea that we get all the way through the King's Cross chapter with no mention. If Credence has some relationship to the Dumbledore family,
why is he not in the series?
Why is he not a huge part of that final conversation and reveal? Is that when we finally, the satisfaction of Dumbledore's sort of confession at the end, is it a setting to think that he's still concealing things at that point?
Well, he is, right? He says to Lita, let's see, I got her name right. I hear that confession is good for the soul.
Right, I'm told.
I'm told. Yeah. Don't walk in the way that I walk, right?
Yeah.
Right. But that's in this film, I think. Yeah. Are we comfortable thinking that by the end of the Harry Potter series, he still hasn't fully confessed to Harry all of his his secrets?
Yeah. And we have a Dumbledorian problem, which is they're looking at the blood promise, and Newt says, "Can you break it?" Dumbledore says, "I'm not sure, maybe." But should you break a promise?
Well, no, he says, "Can you destroy it?"
Can you destroy it? Right, but that's to break the promise. Like, should you break the promise?
Well, I think that there is like a double entendre there going on with destroying it means breaking the promise, and that's part of the ambiguity of his response there.
Yeah,
how many films will it take
to break? And of course, as soon as it breaks it, then Grindelwald can attack Dumbledore and Hogwarts and everything. So, I think it's going to be more complex than just can I get around the magic that our blood is made. And I mean, Rowling has put blood at the very center of her myth, death, and they give the Paschal Mystery and the giving over of the self and mother's love and dying for another.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that gets back to the ambiguity of the Mirror of Erised scene of the thing that he kind of should do morally and the thing that he feels compelled to do in terms of his emotional relationship are inseparable and contradictory.
His heart's desire is that memory of himself and Grindelwald making that pact.
Yeah.
We have to take that away from him seeing that in the Mirror of Erised instead of seeing it in a pensieve. That's what I was like, why didn't we just see that in a pensieve? But I'm answering my own question. Exactly. Like maybe there is a good reason why we didn't see that in a pensieve instead.
Yeah.
Why are pensives like on the why are they God's eye views?
I don't know. I always thought that too.
Why don't they have the memory through their eyes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Snape's, Dumbledore's. We get to see all those.
Well, and see yourself.
Yeah, are they, like we saw the one that Slughorn tampered with.
Yeah.
And it was very obviously tampered with. But, you know, I mean, we tamper with our memories all the time, you know, in our own existence. So like, you know, I remember things one way and my best friend is always like, yeah, no, you actually weren't like that at all. I'm like, okay, you know, I kind of have to believe her, you know? So yeah, I do think, I mean, I appreciate in the terms of the story world that she has to have, you know, certain rules, but yeah, it does seem like a problematic element for getting at the truth.
I don't know. She may be stuck. I'm stuck. We'll see.
I will say, just on one more note about this baby, and Corvus or Credence or whoever it was, it does say in the shooting script, and again, this is another thing that B. Groves pointed out, that it does say that the kid who got switched, the woman that drowned with Corvus, was not the baby's mother. It was the baby's aunt.
I noticed that as well. Yeah.
So that is an interesting possibility, which means so it could be Kendra's child. Well, Kendra and Percival, I guess, because it'd have to be Percival's because otherwise it's not a Dumbledore, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess it could also be Ariana's, but then the problem is it a great aunt or is it just, you know?
What's Ariana's maiden name?
Dumbledore.
Oh, Kendra's, you mean?
Kendra's.
I don't know. Did we find out? Anybody remember? Did we get one?
No.
Why is everybody going to America? What's the deal?
What's so great about America?
I'm texting someone.
And when do we get to Canada? Like, hello, like we've gone Harry Potter International. Nothing. Too cold for wizards up here. They didn't even the British Empire wasn't cruel enough to send prisoners to Canada, right? You know, it's just.
I don't think we get a maiden name for her. She was
surprised.
She was Muggle born.
Yeah, I think we're kind of into Pottermore minutia that probably, and she was Muggle born, so it's probably Smith.
Yeah.
The Muggles just don't have as good of names. Although Riddle's a good name, actually. So. Yeah.
Harry Potter Wiki doesn't have it.
No.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
I've asked the one question that the community hasn't yet anticipated and researched to the nth degree. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's kind of like, I guess that's, for me, that was sort of my question is where, you know, has she gotten herself into trouble? If blood still sits at the center of, as the sort of the imaginative or theological center of everything. So brotherhood or siblinghood, family relationships, you know, blood promises, you know, death, self-giving, murder, it's all there, right? So will this blood promise, like, can it be broken? Are we tied in some kind of way here? That's the kind of question that I have. And I think in that case, that's not a bad storytelling motif to leave that open for the next chapter. I don't think we're in bad shape there. I do think she's getting into a corner that she's going to have to figure out how to get out of. So
yeah, well, and it's a big one to end the movie with a reveal if the reveal isn't true. I mean, the only thing I can think to compare it to is the ending of Half-Blood Prince. That's the only time where the end reveal turns out to not be what it's presented as.
Right.
But in that case, I think you have 6 books worth of clues and character development that in the 2-year gap, you had all of that to sort of use for speculation. Whereas I don't know if this is like a fake out in the same way. I wonder if we have the same kind of foundation to build on and really parse it through to find, other than, I mean, we can theorize and take stabs, but I feel less like it's less of the, are we debating, is Snape, you know, good or not? It's more like we're grasping at anything other than the most literal interpretation of what we're being told. Like, nobody seems to want this to be true. Like,
well,
it's more like, how can it not be true? It's sort of what we're all trying to figure out here.
The name is interesting because, Aurelius is like aura is sort of in the name, but AU is the gold, like the idea of gold.
Right, and there's an alchemy connection there.
Yeah, there's an alchemy
Dumbledore's,
connection.
Yeah.
And the salamander eyes, apparently, that's
and the salamander. And gold is used throughout the film as a leitmotif to kind of tie things in, and so that could be interesting. And then, of course, the phoenix has gold tinged back feathers or wings. I can't remember which. And so there could be that's interesting. And then Aurelius is a king's name too. So there could be that sort of Messiah connection that exists there.
Right, but again, if this is all a Grindelwald ruse, then he's picking a name that sounds great for the part. That's like right. You're this lost, once and future king of the Dumbledore family, that I'll kind of restore you to your rightful place.
Are we doing a bunch of work that's really the filmmaker's job?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like my salary is much lower for this podcast than theirs.
And you had to spend $1 million on your ticket.
I know. That's right. Yeah, it's actually that's only like $10 American though, to be fair. So that's Canadian. I think we're so the question is this a genius we cannot see yet? Is this are these gaps? And my guess is the latter, that we keep trying to find footing for our role as readers of the film, and as people that are wrapped up in the story and committed to seeing the story work its way through. And I don't even think. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, I was just thinking. I feel like if we have to ask ourselves, is this genius that we don't see yet? The answer is pretty clear, at least to me. Like, I never questioned that. I mean, sure, I was a child, but I never questioned that. And I still don't question that about the books that I'm reading that are in process of being written or anything like that. It's sort of just movies. I feel like film is a different game. They're done for different reasons, I think, which may or may not be fair to say. But I think if we ask ourselves, we just can't see it, and we have to work so hard to fill in the gaps and so hard to see that there's potential growth, I think the answer is clear.
Right.
Yeah, why do I have to read a shooting script to be able to answer some of the questions that I have? It's just absolutely bonkers.
Especially when we look at some of these things and see that even within the last few years there are contradictions. I mean, we have 3 or 4 different potential birth years for credence here. And then if we can go to the next slide, I think we can put McGonagall in this territory too. So we did the math when we were setting up this PowerPoint. And according to the math, in the flashback scenes of Hogwarts with teenage Newt and Lita, Minerva McGonagall should be negative 25 years old.
That's good.
Just putting that out there. So I think given that we know there are these contradictions, it takes away a certain amount of confidence when you're theorizing about, who is Credence really supposed to be? Well, his birth date is all over the place, and so is McGonagall's. So what are we I think it's just more kind of fodder for that feeling of these things are still being figured out.
Well, and it wasn't necessary. We don't need McGonagall there at this time. We could have another pretty Scottish actress play.
Exactly. It's not that it's just role. Being figured out in this moment. It's that it's being thrown in for the sake of being thrown in. I think that's a major fault too, that time and time again these franchises, these phenomenons fall into just using their own mythos for the sake of using it instead of for any given purpose.
Yeah, you know what this is? It's the Saturday Night Live equivalent of more cowbell, right? We need more cowbell here.
Yeah, right.
We need more links back.
or I hated on that show when the characters start laughing at themselves. I just can't stand it because, like, you know, in the 70s, they just never would have been laughing at themselves, you know, and it was just indulgent to me to have her in there. You know, kind of, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, the Easter eggs, like, I kind of enjoyed seeing the Quidditch team fly by. And I liked our little moments where we were in the everyday life of Hogwarts. You know, we just got a little bit of that, you know, in Dumbledore's classroom and in the halls and, you know, the student, you know, Lita's memories. But what I want is, I also don't want to see people apparating onto Hogwarts grounds. Like, you know, is it too hard? Like, just establish that as a once. I mean, you know, was that ever a good idea to let people apparate onto Hogwarts grounds? Did they only make that rule when Harry Potter came to?
No, it's old, and it was said like 400.
Have we not read Hogwarts: A History?
Hermione says.
Hermione says like about 15 times every.
Am I the only one?
We haven't, and we need the book, and we need to read it, and J.K. Rowling needs to write that.
I have to say, this McGonagall gift's kind of giving me a headache. Plus, it's spelt wrong, and it's just, you know, she doesn't approve.
We can flip to the next slide if you want.
I don't even know how to approve myself, right? So, you know.
Well, so. and I kind of threw the, you know, Dumbledore as the precursor to Lupin up there too, with Defense Against the Dark Arts. Because again, it's like, I said this when I saw that scene in the trailer. Like, I get that there's a parallelism clearly, and if they want to communicate Dumbledore as a good teacher, and their shorthand for that is you're supposed to think of Lupin, I'm kind of on board. Like, you make me think of Lupin, I'm happy. Yeah. But look, like, I think when the fan service gets on my nerves is when it undercuts something that is kind of already important to us or established. And like, it's cool to see McGonagall and it's cool to think of these characters, but in doing so, are you sort of taking away from what, you know, was there originally? Like, to me, that kind of communicates that the thing I always assumed, which is the Boggart lesson, is Lupin's sort of pedagogical creativity, that like he maybe thought of a lesson that nobody else had before. Yeah. Now you're telling me that that's been taught for the last 50 years, that's a set sort of lesson in the Hogwarts curriculum. And
it's beautiful.
I'm now annoyed.
That's a perfect. I had the same thought. I mean, you just said it perfectly, but yeah.
You're right, but it is actually one of the better moments of two psychological spaces defined. Newt's fear of going to an office and her fear of whatever that was, right? And it was a very pretty image, the child floating into the sea, and to take that. So it works, except for the fact that now it makes Lupin look like a come along lately. And is that a phrase? Is that I just emerged from a Dickens novel there for a second.
Come along lately.
And so, Johnny, or like Wild West.
Johnny come lately,
Johnny.
Johnny come lately. That's it.
I'm just singing Eagle songs now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You know, there's a new kid in town, right? And so but I mean, so even when something's done really well, we have these kind of moments. It's just. Yeah, I just would have loved a lot more of that, and just kind of slowing down. We almost needed, and this is going to tell you where the problem of the film is. The horrible thing I'm about to say is you needed something like a kidnapped child to watch what everybody's doing in order to stabilize the vision of the film through things. You know how that happens, right? How there's a character and then we keep seeing things based on the reference point of that character. We needed that throughout this entire film, and or in 3 threads, we needed something like that.
Right.
We didn't have.
Well, and I guess Jacob was sort of that in the first one as the Muggle. He's sort of the
that's exactly it.
He's the Harry. He's the kind of audience surrogate of I don't know anything about, but this is great, but I don't understand what's going on. So please explain it to me. And again, like, he's in this movie, but he's only in like a tenth of it. You know, it's not like really a point of view in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, no, it's a lost opportunity for that character because he has that stabilizing feature. Um,
Yeah.
and then you can it's like the blues, right? If you have a great bass line, you can do an awful lot of improvisation. But if you don't have the strong bass line, well, like it's jazz, right? It's something totally different, right? And then improvisation works on a whole different scale. And so like my metaphor is falling apart, but we just like
I love it.
we need the bass line in this film, so then Dumbledore can play and Grindelwald can be weird.
Yeah.
Right.
And
The
himself.
rhythm section was not there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right. There's no kind of, we don't have a beat in this film.
Well, and that
Yeah.
gets back to kind of our original question of, I understand that there is duality at play here, but what's this story about?
What's the unification?
Like, is this Newt's story? Is it Jacob's story? Is it Dumbledore's story? Is it Credence's
Queenie's story?
I think it's the Bowtruckle. I think actually the Bowtruckle's the key to everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that is probably more like the kidnapped child, because obviously
right.
it used to live on the Hogwarts grounds, and then
That's true.
In its
Where
neediness.
do Bowtruckles live?
Yeah.
In trees of lawn quality
In
wood.
specific trees.
Yeah.
Lawn quality wood.
Yeah.
And I also saw that. I was just going to quickly say, when we're talking about whose story it is, I was looking up like different reviews and things about this movie, and apparently it has been said that this won't always be Newt's story.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Like,
So,
as in he might not even be in them?
I think so. I mean, I don't think that that's actually going to be the case, but I don't think he's going to be the central character. And it might have even specified this won't be Newt's central, like,
Yeah, sure.
he won't be the central character of the series. But
I'm okay with that.
if you look it up, there's actually been said, which I think is too bad because he's such a good character, but very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. And at what point do we still call it Fantastic Beasts if it's no longer a story?
Yeah, this is like, I wonder if that was our failed the failed choice to begin with, is how do we root all these films? Rooting them to Fantastic Beasts means that there's this thread. However, an obscurial is a beast? I don't know. Is a phoenix
so
is though.
Nagini.
Is Nagini a beast, right? And that's actually the nuance of the book. And I still don't have is it bestiary or bestiary? I know that we decided before, but I don't have a bestiary. I still don't have like the big, beautiful leather-bound version of Fantastic Beasts.
I have it down there.
Does it have all the pictures and everything?
Yeah.
It's illustrated, yeah.
I still don't have that. So this is, it could be that they rooted it to the wrong thing, but it could be well done. Like, I think the beasts in the first film were well done. And so in this film, I'll go 50-50 on it. I'm waiting on the next one to see.
I thought at first, go ahead, Emily.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, maybe the aim is for it, and I don't think this is working terribly well if the aim, but maybe the aim is to have the beasts be the central figures in this. But that's really difficult for a movie made for humans to watch. But I did notice how many birds were in this particular film, and then I started thinking about birds in this entire thing, and more so than just beasts. I mean, there's a lot of beasts in these movies, but birds were like overwhelming me. There were just tons. Everywhere you turned, there was another bird. And I found that really striking on my rewatch today. Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great point. I just remember when these were first announced, and back when it was just going to be a trilogy, and I just remember thinking, oh, you know what I don't want? I don't want these magical creatures are on the loose, and we got to go wrangle them up every time every movie. I remember thinking, like, that's just going to be terrible. And I think Newt's character changed everything for me. I think
now you're like, that's all I want.
And that's all I want. I just want Newt for 5 movies. I'll just, perfect.
Just Niffler around.
Yeah. You can have a little Netflix special. I think one of the strongest for me, and again, I just love Newt's character, the potential for Newt's character and what she's doing with the magical creatures. But one of the strongest scenes for me was his home, just as it was in the first movie with his case. You go in and you see the care he has for these animals, as he's actually literally caring for a human as well, fixing him with the ointment. He took care of, that's the only reason he goes into the case in the first movie, is to get the ointment for Jacob, to take care of him. And then he takes Jacob along with him and cares for creatures one by one. And then you see an extension of that in this movie. His home is built around creatures. It's not the other way around. And they're all creatures who need him and want him in their life. And then you go see him in the circus, and he's out of the element, just like the creatures are out of their element, and yet he can still communicate with them wordlessly, which I think is in contrast to the words spoken by Grindelwald. He only has words. And so there's just so much potential for actually using animals in a very interesting, intelligent way. Good. And so I hope she doesn't lose that. I hope they don't become just the toys and the trappings of the movies, but actual plot points as well. And
I'm won over. I'm one to your point.
I hope so. I'm wary because 5 movies, but
yeah, right. Can I just say though that if I knew that Accio Niffler was a thing that you could do, I don't think that we would have had a first film. I think the first film would have been like 15 minutes long, because Accio Niffler over.
Over.
Right. And I think there's something on Pottermore about how you can't, when people ask, like, why can't he just Accio all the magical beasts to collect them? She said on Potter, you can't, Accio doesn't work with organic beings.
Except for, right. And then you have people apparating into Hogwarts. So that's what, I mean, there was so much about the film that I really did like. And then,
to be fair, they were apparating onto the bridge in front of Hogwarts. So
well, then why couldn't Voldemort have just done that in book 6?
Right. And there were gates when Voldemort attacked, we should recall. So the gates are put up later, I guess. So
yeah, Dumbledore learns from his mistake.
I think discontinuity directorship is really the role of every fan, and and so we'll find those. I'm one to Kelly's idea of the beasts. I think they can be elegantly woven through. I don't think this was as powerful as the first one for that, but if we have a Phoenix coming at a critical point, and the Niffler turned out to be key in this.
Mm-hmm. And the Raven. That young Newt shows to young Lita and caring for it,
but that's also what draws Queenie into Grindelwald's grasp, right? Is it a raven?
I'm not remembering that.
His banners have the raven emblem to call them to their rally, but that's another point of where's the Deathly Hallows?
Yeah.
Well, he's holding one.
There's Hallows.
No, I mean the symbol.
Oh yeah.
All over the book.
Yeah, I know. Where is it?
There's also a skull hookah at the top, by the way.
Nice. There it is.
But
and
there's just Hallows everywhere. And where was my Hallows imagery with Grindelwald and his sort of rallying cry around? I mean, maybe that's to come. Maybe that's part of his, whole shtick is kind of the bid towards invincibility and immortality and everything. And the idea of the greater good. But that was, because it was so prominent in the marketing, it was sort of a little strange to not have any homage to that within the story.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't even watch the trailer. Like, how far was I protected? Did not see the trailer. I saw the Nagini bit by accident in the doctor's office.
Maybe a good call.
Yeah. So I went in.
Keeps you from expectations.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Kelly. Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know what I was going to say.
It was profound.
Something about the
Hallows.
Yeah. Well, we're about at 2 hours here, so any kind of final things? I did have 1 or 2 more slides, but it's nothing terribly important. How about we go any other things about the in the next slide, any of the other supporting characters? We kind of went through a lot of them, but Anything about Theseus? Anybody care about Theseus?
Great casting. Great casting with Theseus.
Yeah, good casting. Again, like it's sort of like an extra character that, like anything that doesn't serve the story is sort of evil, I think, right? So I'm not certain that, I mean, even the love triangles, like you even have like his helper right at the beginning, and it's funny in the film. You could take your shirt off when you go into,
Oh, Bunty, right?
But again, Bunty,
yeah, what the hell?
so now we have like, so how many love triangle like implicated love affairs do we have, and none are fulfilled? Is this what happened? Like no one ends up with anyone, like
not yet.
Well, the Niffler had babies.
The Niffler had babies, but there's not like a Mr. Niffler. There's only a Mrs. or vice versa running around. So we only have one adult Niffler at any one moment, right? So I assume they're mammals, but I don't know.
And this whole time,
marsupials.
Marsupials, yeah.
And this is just like a gripe with me, but this whole time I don't think we've even mentioned Tina, and I feel like for me it's because that character just falls so flat.
Tina?
Yeah, I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know what it is. The whole first film and this film did nothing for me, and we haven't even talked about her because why even bother? She just doesn't do it for me.
So what?
And it's such a shame.
Why doesn't Joanne Rowling create powerful witches? She creates intelligent witches and organized witches, and like, Hermione's as important as anyone in the 7-book series, but like if we're looking at our power centers, like the Nomad president, whatever her name is not powerful in that sense. She does better
in this film though.
Well, but she's like
her very brief role. Yeah, I mean, she just cuts through the niceties and says, don't underestimate this guy, and that's her major contribution here. But
and here we have Lita. Well,
I was going to say that Bellatrix was powerful, but I think she's
just scrappy.
She's more determined. Maybe she's more just
an obsessive.
Ruthless.
Obsessive, relentless. Than actually powerful. I'm scared of her because of how she thinks and who she is, but not because she's
willing to do.
A powerful witch. Yeah. Yes, what she's willing to do, but not because she's
smart.
She's no Albus, right? There's the greatest.
But she is serious.
And,
like she's the serious, like she's the equivalent of Sirius. It's just he loses in the duel, right? So she survives the duel, and he loses. But I think they're roughly equivalent in something or other.
Right.
I think Nagini is going to be very powerful.
Yeah, but again, like what we have is the sad loss of the self. Nagini either chooses evil, like the woman chooses evil, or she
can't help it,
or she gets lost in the serpent. And so one of the
so either way, we know hers is tragic in the end.
Yeah,
like her story
and
can't be. I still think, I don't disagree that it wasn't handled well in this movie, but I still wonder what the potential is for Queenie in terms of being a higher level player than she might appear to be at the beginning.
She's an elegant. She uses magic elegantly, seamlessly. So if she actually chose to be powerful,
right. And the idea of the natural, like we haven't gotten a real explanation, but the idea that it's implied in the books that legilimency is a skill, whereas she has it naturally. That's an interesting. That sets her apart from like any other character we've ever seen. Anybody else that practices those things learned that was an ability that they worked for, whereas she does it just naturally.
Would that make her does that have anything to do with how Grindelwald was able to manipulate her because she was legitimens? Like,
she's sort of empathic.
I think so.
Or would it make her more powerful? Like, I don't know.
I was wondering about that.
that's the I don't know that it fully works, but I think that's kind of what they're getting at is her empathy extends to
Maybe
everybody, to a point that she can see points of view and be perhaps persuaded by them in a way that the other characters wouldn't be.
Or she's just a blunt instrument. Like, look at our social moment where we have, people who are so inclusive that they'll make sure that they exclude the very certain people. And we have people who found their religion on love, so loving that it has to hate and deny certain people. You know what I mean? Like, we're in that kind of moment, and so she chooses to, like, go with the person who can restore the relationship that she's just cut off. It's kind of our social moment. It could be an attempt at a cultural criticism that she's offering. I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. It remains to be seen, but I think that's a really good point. Like, Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Voldemort, we have yet to have any characters who reach that level of kind of raw power.
That's right. Well, and Credence is untapped power. Like, when he's given a wand the first time, he blows up a part of a mountain, right? And so it's but we have no woman that is on that. Even Harry has this instinctive ability that's not just what was given to him in his link with Voldemort, right? I mean, Harry's like a Horcrux throughout the books. Yeah, I said that right. And so, he's like a living part of Voldemort's soul in certain kind of ways, but when it comes to his sheer skill, he's just that, right? He has it. So we don't even have a woman that can do what he can do. So,
the only one that kind of occurs to me that I feel like we get hints, but of course it doesn't go far enough because we only get like the school boy kind of time span, but there's almost heading that way with Ginny. Like, there's references to the fact that Ginny packs a punch that's way above what you would imagine. That I could see it being that after 50 years of practice, she has some sort of kind of raw power behind her. But whether or not that matches Dumbledore level, I don't know.
And McGonagall too, but
because it's like you finish school and then some transformation takes place when you're an adult, and it just takes off, right? Because we're no longer, these films do not put us on a spectrum of power. They put us on that there's a adolescence of power, that we come into some puberty moment of magical power at 18 or 19 that transforms us to another level. I mean, nobody speaks spells in this whole film. Right? Which is difficult.
Wordless magic,
Well, there were a few. There were a few,
yeah.
And especially with, like, effects we hadn't seen before. That was one of the reasons I was excited that I actually, checked out the screenplays, because I would like to know what those spells are. They're kind of interesting. What I really missed is wizard clothes. I mean, I loved everybody's clothes; they're beautiful clothes, but I don't know why we're not dressing like wizards anymore. I just seems like
so
like that coat Tina wears it's so beautiful, and she looks like aristocratic in that coat, but like she doesn't look like a witch in it. You know what I mean? She looks like a European, a very fashionable European woman.
Right. The idea of wizarding robes is sort of not in the films per se, for the most part.
The 20s.
They know exactly how to dress like Muggles, and that disturbs me.
Right.
Yeah, nobody gets it.
Dumbledore's little three-piece suit,
Right.
He goes from that to like flowing purple spangled robes and everything.
But how do you film a film in the 20s when you can't stabilize the cities like you want, right? They're too expensive to do. How do you not do the fashion? The fashion is amazing, right? The speakeasy in New York, in Manhattan that they went to, and the circus here in Paris. These are great moments, right? So, yeah, I guess so. But even like in the film version of the Harry Potters, notice they just kind of have cast the robes over jeans and t-shirts and stuff.
They just dropped that relatively quickly, wasn't it? Before movie form, they just sort of dropped it, and now I think it would be almost strange to go back to it.
But the adults always they didn't just wear
Yeah,
playing
McGonagall.
Filipinos.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Dumbledore and
Kinda do.
McGonagall and
They
the
do
Weasleys.
in the books or in the films.
Mrs.
I feel
Weasley,
like they
yeah,
do.
Mrs. Weasley is always in Muggle clothes. Yeah.
Muggle clothes, I don't know. I would have to go back and look, but her stuff always looked a little 19th century to me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she's just very
I mean,
sensible.
some of it's old fashioned, but it's not necessarily what I think of as described in the book as kind of robes necessarily. They're sort of these weird old fashioned kind of hybrids.
Yeah.
It
But,
just
yeah,
makes me think when and if they ever do anything Marauders era, it better be the most 1970s thing I've ever seen.
That would be killer.
Like
I would
bell
love that.
bottoms, like long
Like
Yeah.
Wizard 70s, that would be amazing.
Wizard 70s.
Like,
It's basically
They
how
could-
people
Here
dress
for
in
it.
the 70s anyway.
Just think about it. In
Exactly.
Disco era, wizards could walk around any city and nobody would notice,
Nobody
right?
would know.
You know, it's
Here I
like,
am. What's up?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, that is a cape. That is a cape.
that is a platform shoe.
It's
That's
okay,
what that
man.
is.
Just go with it.
That's right.
Everybody looks like Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Everybody. Yeah. Well done.
Don't even have to change; they just blend in. Well, okay. So I have our final slide. Is do we have any thoughts, predictions, what we want to see, what we don't want to see? We've covered a lot of it, but the only promise we have from the Word of God here is that answers are given. I guess I don't know if we all agree on what exactly the right questions are, but any final thoughts or predictions for the future?
It's hard to believe that tweet from her. I don't know.
The
I don't know if I
Dumbledore
believe in her what she says anymore.
You don't believe her.
I guarantee that is a misdirection. Dumbledore is.
Dumbledore has to crisis. Dumbledore has to come to crisis. Cannot. He has to die and rise again in his own character in some way. So that has to happen in this film. And before he gets to the point of dueling Grindelwald, that has to take place. There has to be a loss. He has to give something up. I don't think we'll know Credence's true blood next film. I just don't think we'll have that. But I think we'll see the Phoenix in the next film. So that's and I don't think we'll know Queenie's ultimate result, and I don't think we'll know Nagini's ultimate result.
Mm-hmm. Right, those are maybe end game questions.
Yeah.
And I think the Ministry will still be useless.
That's about the safest prediction you can have.
So my film, I don't know if it was the same in the United States, but my film actually said Ministry of Magic in the United States.
Like American Ministry, and it's like, what happened to MACUSA?
MACUSA, right?
Oh, right.
And MACUSA, it says in Pottermore, is like from like 1600. It's like super.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of an error there. And I actually looked at some screenshots from like some Cyrillic language, Balkan nation or something, and from the best I could understand the letters, they also had the word ministry. So an error there. So.
Right. So more Ministry of Magic fails.
Yeah. I think also like they want these films, they want very much to echo Harry Potter. I think that the filmmakers are scared that Harry Potter fans won't know it's Harry Potter and that the general public won't know it's Harry Potter. I've heard that from people, from one person who knows some people. But I just thought that was like, I think that's very silly, because if you're a fan, you know all of this sort of stuff, and you don't need the Mirror of Erised, you don't need Nicholas Flamel and McGonagall and Dumbledore and a visit to Hogwarts and all this sort of stuff. Although I very much liked the visit to Hogwarts.
I think we need the Hogwarts. Yeah.
I think that was one of actually the smartest things that I think they could have done. Seeing
I think
Hogwarts
will be a character in film 3 or 4. I think we'll see.
Yeah, those flashback scenes were so good. They felt so. There was the moments that you could sit, right, in a movie that was so action heavy and so much going on. You could just sit and feel good about being back in Hogwarts and seeing characters in their robes, and also seeing it. Everyone who grew up with Harry Potter are now adults and teachers in the world, and to see Hogwarts from the teacher's perspective finally is just the coolest thing. So I like that they did that.
Even unborn teachers. So,
which is a skill.
It's a skill.
Oh,
she's really good.
Aren't even born yet.
I know.
So was Mad-Eye Moody?
Was
impressive. He was actually polyjuicing McGonagall.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's what was happening.
Barty Crouch got a time turn and then went back and polyjuiced.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a prediction. I'm gonna predict that Jacob is gonna break Nicholas Flamel's hand another 4 or 5 times.
Well, and Flamel comes out of hiding, so maybe we'll see him. Like, this is one of the questions. If you can live forever, do you actually ever live? Right? That's always one of our human questions. And so maybe we'll see him kind of step outside of his state in Paris and play a bit. I don't know. I liked some of the French. I liked hearing French language without all of its translation. That they trusted the audience to kind of.
That was nice.
Yeah, les noms magiques, I think, is the name for no mages, and
right.
And who calls muggles can't spells?
Can't spell.
I don't know. I think
that was
that's
in there.
I think it's
can't spells. Is this like Van
Appalachian
Quail?
or something? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Those are the Canadians. Yeah, it's finally the Canadians. Although it'd be like can spell sorry. 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 So that's not that we want to differentiate at all, right? We're a bicultural society. So it's yeah, and so I like lots of touches. I think will it be as international? I think we're going to slide back to England in this film, in this next film. But again, like a romp, like you have the whole globe in 3 films to get back home in.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to get back to the country English villages by the 5th film, but we don't have to be there right away. What do you do?
Right. We could follow them over to the Alps, like do a kind of, Middle Europe adventure. Zachary Coman makes a good point that eventually we have to end in 1945. So first film was 1926, second film 1927. There's got to be time jumps in here somewhere. Yeah. So at what point do we start like having significant gaps? It could be this one, like maybe we pick up with them 5 or 10 years later. At some point we have to make up, although it clearly the math is not the priority. So who knows? But would think that at some point there's going to be a time jump in here.
Yeah, of course. Or I mean, they just change it, because the reality is the reason we have films in the 20s is you can't have films in the 30s because they're really depressing.
Well, I mean, but I guess that's a question. Are we going to get into some 1930s kind of history parallels? Like we've got like some of the World War II and 20s and kind of rise of fascism. Maybe, the Depression is a thing that we start to play with.
Well, the Depression wasn't a thing it was in North America because we had an environmental crisis that went along with the economic downfall, right? So Britain, it was like, things are a little tight. I think we'll be okay. So I don't think she'd be aware of that story in the way that we are. We're twisting corn husks in order to feed the fire, right? That's not the European story.
Right.
In the same way that we didn't suffer from the war the way that Europeans suffered in the war.
Sure.
So no, those are my predictions. I think this will be a good one. Fantastic Beasts.
Hey, this isn't a prediction, but I'll end with a request. Can we have a better title than The Crimes of Grindelwald? That's all I want.
I would like that.
For the next film, yeah.
I want something that intrigues me. I think what I loved about the titles of all the Potter books is that they ask a question. You're supposed to wonder what is the thing you don't know what's being referenced in the title. You want to know what it is or what's its relationship. Right. Yeah. And that's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them didn't really do that, but it has just a whimsy to it that's fun and delightful. And The Crimes of Grindelwald is just kind of literal, and also I
Yeah.
don't know what it means. Like,
Still not really explained. I mean, we know that he has
he
done
does
crimes,
crimes.
but
He does lots
which
of
ones? He's done all of them.
Right. All like, so I'd like something a little more evocative from the
Yeah.
title department.
Yeah, it could be like,
Fantastic Beasts and the big bad guy.
yeah, that's right. Grindelwald's, struggle with halitosis or something. Like, we'll see what
Yeah.
the next. See, the problem is it gives us
The missing Dumbledore.
and the
right.
kidney stones of Grindelwald.
and I do wonder now why are the mythic moments not being linked in more, like the Deathly Hallows and the
Well, that'll happen.
legends.
Right.
And-
Right.
Has
We
to.
Formation
have
of that
to get
symbol. And then he's got to start. He's got the Elder Wand, but what else does he have,
Right.
and what else does he? Maybe the cloak will come into it. This next film.
Does
And then
Dumbledore
that'll
have
be-
the
Oh,
stone?
I bet we're gonna see the acquisition of the cloak. Well,
Yeah.
well, not really, because he gets it from his father. He gets it from James. But
Right.
I
But we could
bet you
get
Dumbledore is gonna see it, and it's gonna be in his hands at some point, and he's gonna, I don't know.
Grindelwald's
that
going to be after it. Yeah.
They didn't have the cloak, I think, but the stone, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
do we know where this
think-
stone is at this point?
Well, and
When
maybe
does the
we'll
stone
I don't know.
get some background on both of those things.
Yeah, I think they're gonna want to show both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a cool film moment, right? When they did the animation in the Deathly Hallows film.
So good.
One of my favorite
So good.
moments.
It
Yeah.
was really a great genre break, and to have it in the Lovegoods home, I think that's what it was in the book anyway. It's just a good moment, and I we're missing those rooting mechanisms and the mythic connections, and so I think she'll watch our tape on YouTube, which for everybody it'll be up on YouTube in a few days, and then she'll know what to do, right?
She has a lot to think about.
After hearing us talk and stuff. I actually dreamed the other night that I was on the plane and I got sat next to Rowling, and so I convinced her to do a class at Signum University. I thought she'd be a good guest lecturer, and because I let her do whatever she
Tuition
wanted.
just went up.
Well, and tuition is now an extra $25. And so, but she actually did medieval bestiaries and like, so she did basically medieval backgrounds to modern fantasy or something like that. So yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's my dream right now.
Yeah, that's right. That'd be great. That'd be a great
About.
class, wouldn't it?
Yes, it
So,
would.
but she chose to do it as live lectures and tape them, so we had to change our model. But I convinced Corey it was okay.
She could do the course on alchemy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I can request a course on alchemy.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
I'll be qualified.
And then
Yeah.
and then that would be about medieval beasts as well.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Is
Salamanders.
we won't really have classes. We have classes on Harry Potter. We won't have classes on these films if they continue the same mold. They will leave us as good films that we enjoyed at one point in our life and we watch from time to time because we love the world. Whereas the Harry Potter books still have a substance to them that we can teach them and play with.
Actually, yeah, I'm hoping to find substance in the movies. I'm hoping to dig into both. I am looking at Harry Potter, the books, but I think it's very interesting that she chose to go in the route that she chose a protagonist that is just so unlike, I think, your normal fantasy protagonist, in that he's not the chosen one. He's just some person who cares a lot about creatures of all kinds. And I think that is integral to her stories from the get-go. And I think it's going to be a very important thing in these novels. And that's actually what I'm trying to do. I really want to tie what she's doing in these movies to where she's been in the books and how it's all influencing each other and how one can, looking at one can teach us more about the other. So I'm really hoping for substance.
Is the politics of Middlehead, is that new? Is she a third way thinker in general? because this is the theme in this book, is to neither norism. And we know this well in Canada. That's sort of like, we're always doing that, right? So that's our default. That's the problem, right? We always have to check ourselves for safety. But she's really advocating for, remember the middle head? And Tina says, are you the only person that says that?
Right. Who else uses this?
That's right. Yeah, and so, so is that her? Was that her political or social space when she wrote the books, or is that something that's developed in her, Kelly?
Actually, I don't know what your middle head. I'm sorry, I don't know what that.
Tina. He says to Tina.
Oh, Tina said, I don't remember.
There's a Tina scene. He says you've
remember.
gone middle head, which is a reference to some three-headed creature where the middle is
right.
Because he's saying he called
the voice
Aura
of reason and
she's not just a careerist, basically.
Yeah, you've got middle head. It's the expression derived from the three heads of the Runaspor. The middle one is the visionary, and the other two.
I'd have to look that up.
I think one like kills, and one questions or something like that. I can't remember.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and so every Aura in Europe wants Credence dead except you. You've gone middle head. So, and I think that's actually a really important clue to how she sees the way through the social moment.
I do think.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I don't do sides, but then also choosing a side, and then
I don't know that it was authentic, but it was a way, I think, for her to approach that middle way. And what does it mean to choose? The UK is having this like a similar crisis to the United States in social political spacing. It's just different. It feels different, but I think it feels like a crisis to them in a similar kind of way. And so I think we're seeing that come out in these. Certainly the last film and maybe in this one.
Yeah, she's certainly very vocal about her opinions.
She is on Twitter.
But
what does it mean to choose a middle way, to hold the complexity together, to have wisdom, and still end up choosing a side, right? That's a really interesting social something or other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be interesting.
Well, there's potential. I think we can all agree, like, there's a lot of potential for the next 3 movies now. So
I'll get to work.
Call us, Joe. Do you want to teach
flight.
or
I think you get a couple $1,000 actually if you teach. So I'm sure she'll be attracted by the PayPal.
Yeah. All proceeds go to Lumos. So awesome. All right. Well, we're about 2.5 hours, so we should let you guys go. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to everybody who came throughout the whole year. And Emily, are you going to sing any Christmas carols for us? No? You're good?
No, it's still Advent in my world, so not for a while.
Right.
Not for a
while. You got the whole rest of the month.
Only in rehearsal.
Rehearsal. Big days coming though.
So we cross our fingers when we sing our.
I'm really sad there's no Christmas movie this year. There's no big blockbuster. People can send me tweets on what I'm supposed to take my family to at Christmas. Yeah. Yeah. Or should we just like hole up in our basement and watch Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
Yeah, watch the Harry Potter. I've never sat down and watched the 20 hours of Harry Potter all in one go. So.
Yeah, neither have I.
Neither have I.
It's probably a good reason not to.
Everybody's New Year's.
Aim high. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming, and happy holidays, and we'll see you guys at Movie Club in 2019.
Excellent.
Good night.
And to you. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.